Where do you think people go wrong with building motorcycles?
Damn, that's a fucking good question. I would say maybe paying too much or going towards something that's popular. You know, anything that's kind of in swing, in popularity, people kind of gravitate towards, which drives the market a little bit. You know, sometimes there's great bikes out there for cheap that would give you the same feel or the same experience with building a motorcycle that might even be better than what's popular. For me, at least, you know, two things that I see all the time, you know, like Sportsters. Fucking people love Sportsters. People also love vintage Hondas, CBs, CB550s, CB750, CB350s. And those are just two small makes and models out of this vast fucking market that was blowing up in the 70s. For me, like, my geeky thing is Kawasaki's. And there's not a lot of guys out there that are like, oh, like, you know, fucking Kawasaki's are my bikes, you know? And because of that, I definitely have kind of built a rapport for myself because I branched out from what was popular. And it taught me more, you know? It's a little bit different than going towards a Honda, going towards something that's readily available. Maybe you have to work a little harder at it. I think you learn a little more. It kind of forces you to delve in and research.
And you built the bike that Ed won.
Yeah, I did, which is a Kawasaki. It's a 79 KZ650. Yeah, and he was stoked, man, you know?
Who wouldn't be stoked?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's crazy. He, I guess I have to say, he bought more tickets than anyone, really? Actually, yeah. He bought 5 spots at $100 a piece. So you can imagine how I felt when I pulled his fucking number off my list. I was like, thank God, dude, you know, because I've never done a raffle before, and like, it's definitely honest because I built a really good thing, but like I feel, I don't know, I'm such a genuine dude, and like I don't like feeling like I'm picking people's pockets, you know what I mean? And it felt like that a little bit, you know, like, so him winning it, you know, definitely, it made me feel better about, you know, justifying taking fucking $500 from the guy who in turn won a rad fucking bike for that price. And he's stoked, man. It's fucking cool.
What's a dream bike you would love to rebuild that you haven't built yet?
I'm a big fan of vintage Harleys. I think I'm definitely a realist, so I kind of gravitate towards what would be more accessible for me and my budget. So I would say a shovelhead. You know, I've never gotten to the point where I've had enough free dough or stuff stacked up that's not going somewhere important, where I've been able to buy it, like, you know, a shovelhead motor, you know, just a righteous early 70s generator shovelhead.
Why are they called shovelhead? I don't even know.
That's, you know, I think that's probably a question for a purist for Harley. You know, I know it as that. It normally has something to do with the rocker boxes. You know, it's generally, it goes flat head, knuckle head, pan head, shovel head, iron head. And each one of those, every name or moniker has some semblance as to how the motor looks or how the top of the motor looks. Yeah. Flatheads are really short. Knuckleheads, you know, kind of look like a fucking fist. A shovel head looks like like the curvature of a spade shovel. A pan head looks like the top looks like something you'd bake a fucking piece of cornbread in, you know. And iron heads are just like gnarly, like this. That's an iron head motor. I wish I had the cylinders. They're like heavy and rusty and they look like shit. They're just They're like the redheaded stepchild of the family, but a great name. That's why they call them that.
Speaking of redhead stepchilds, what would you say is the most questionable trend in motorcycle history?
Fuck. It's a really
There's
good.
some bad ones out there, man.
Damn, that's a really good question. So many things come to mind. Fuck.
You can rattle out a couple, man.
Pointy stuff, sharp shit, like fucking, like you look, just sharp stuff. You don't need like studs and like skulls, like tough guy shit. Riding a motorcycle isn't about being fucking tough, you know what I mean? And that's like, that's just like such a fucking shitty thing.
I agree with you though.
I think like, those are the things that I would gravitate towards that are like bad trends.
I mean, when I started riding, like I would see those kinds of people, and I was like, I don't want to be like that kind of typical, everything, spider web shit. I didn't want to be like that kind of guy.
Yeah, and I mean, I get why some people gravitate towards that, especially like, I come from a love of like counterculture and like horror films and, like punk rock and fucking safety pins in your nose and, all this. And I think that those stylized things like maybe have some sort of draw with that a little bit. So people gravitate towards them, but like, you don't need to have this image of being tough for someone to like see you riding and like think that it's fucking cool, you know what I mean? Like, dude, you're on a motorcycle, like it's fucking cool enough, you know what I mean?
Long distance, steady speed, or short for the thrill?
That's a good fucking question too, man. For me, living in LA for so many years, I've never done like a cross country trip. The most I've done round trip is like 600 miles, which is, I mean, not bad, but certainly not like as far as some people would go, do like a coast to coast kind of trip or whatever. Even just, Washington to Southern California is like 1,500 miles. Coming from riding in LA for so long, it's very much like, it's the rat race, man. It's fast paced. People drive fucking fast on the freeways. So I've been kind of like molded into this aggressive, short, fast, like dipping in between. Lane splitting is like a second nature to me. It's just like, I love that stoplight to stoplight kind of feeling, I think. Which isn't for everyone, but like I think I get just as much thrill out of, a fucking mile ride from downtown to here that I would get from doing fucking 300 miles,
Now, if you were gonna do the long trip, what would you do it on?
I would do it on a Harley.
Yeah,
I would do it on a bigger Softail.
the biggest one they got.
A bagger, man, because, comfort is the shit. Comfort's the shit. I wouldn't be doing the trip because I wanted to be seen, So I wouldn't need my machine to look cool necessarily, even though I think like a bagger or a bigger bike is kind of cool. Comfort, man. That way you can really like, you're not labored by your machine, it's there and it's allowing you to take things in a little more, I think.
So when we start projects, whether it's video or photo, we get inspired by like something visually or a song. Like, where do you start with a motorcycle? Because like right here, you started with like, I can tell with just a frame.
Yeah.
Where does it begin?
That's a great question, man. I think I'm going to try and say this without any ego. I think that I'm in a unique position as a bike builder a little bit because I come from a background of vintage Japanese and metric motorcycles. There's not a lot of builders and guys that wrench particularly on that side of things. But I also have a love for vintage Harleys and Harley Davidson and American stuff. Being American, you know what I mean? So a lot of the time, the builds that I've done or I've had the most experience with have been Japanese things. And I think that the styling from those bikes is already very much ingrained in the bike. And I like to build a bike to where the end product has some semblance of what it was originally. You know, I'm not like trying to break boundaries or reinvent the wheel. You know, I think that I'm wise enough to know that I would be a fucking fool to think that I can engineer something better than, you know, 10, 15, 20 engineers at Honda engineered 30, 40, 50 years ago, you know? So I like to put my style on something that's very much already been stylized. You know, just adding a little flair. I've been lucky enough to do a few ground up builds like this in my career. It doesn't happen very often, mostly because it's like a cash flow thing. You know, if I had all the money in the world, I'd be buying fucking frames and building motors and like just doing this, you know? This is the dream really, is like starting from scratch. And even not just buying a frame, like building a frame. You know, I had some experience learning Harleys from a great guy in Southern California named Chris, an old German dude. Worked at his shop for a year, and that's all he really did. And he had a frame jig and TIG welders and a mill and a lathe and fucking all of this equipment and tube benders and stuff where all the tools that you need to create something from scratch.
Yeah.
So I think that, of course, I'm gonna lose sight of your question. Remind me.
I think you made a good point about like how you don't want to completely change it, and I almost think that relates back to like people. Like you shouldn't forget like where you came from.
Sure.
When it comes to building a bike, you kind of relate in that same sort of philosophy to it. I think that's fucking rad, man.
Right on. Yeah. It has. There's some semblance of history there, and that's part of why I love it. You know, and I wanna resemble that to a degree. You know.
Have you had a build go terribly wrong?
All the fucking time. Yeah, absolutely. Especially working as a mechanic professionally. You know, I've been doing this for almost 10 years. A lot of people approach me and are like, I have this bike and this idea, and I've got this picture of this motorcycle that I want my bike to be, you know, or maybe they don't even have that, they just have an idea. And it's hard to, you know, I think we all want to be able to like Vulcan mind meld with fucking people, but that's just not like, well, yeah, Star Trek, yeah, like, you know, like get in someone's brain and see what they're thinking. So being in my position, it's really hard to like totally encompass someone else's vision for a motorcycle. So I've definitely, you know, finished a bike and had someone be like, maybe not as satisfied as I'd like them to be. Sometimes you're working on a lemon of a motor, a lemon of a motorcycle. Like there's just the nature of vintage and old stuff and used stuff is just, you never know where it's been, how it's been treated. Of course, there's all kinds of things you can test, but at the end of the day, like, unless you fucking open up that motor, you don't know what it looks like inside. So someone might pour all of their fucking money into it, and at the end of, you know, a couple months later, it fucking blows up. And then they go, well, what the fuck, you built it? You know, you're the last guy that touched it. And I'm like, well, I may be the last guy that touched it, but it's had 20, 30, 40 years of abuse. Yeah. And God knows how many owners, you know? Yeah. And I mean, I've been in that position. I've bought shit and had it fucking blow up after putting so much time and effort into, you know, and it's, you can't let it bring you down. It's rough.
Everyone hears those stories, man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, first bikes and.
What are your thoughts on Orange County choppers?
OCC! Yeah! Oh, Paulie and Senior. Yeah. I think that's, I haven't thought about OCC choppers, I think ever in my life. I think when I was a kid, it was on TV, and they definitely make good television. I can tell you that if you came in with your bike and I made some reference to Orange County choppers about it, it's definitely a dig, man. It's not a fucking compliment. I think that side of like building, don't get me wrong, those guys are fucking skilled. They know their shit. You know what I mean? When you get down to brass tacks, they build amazing machines. But stylistically, I think that's like, it's so over the top. I don't like gaudy fucking over the top shit. You know what I mean? I'm not a guy. I don't want a ring on every finger. I don't want a fucking gold chain. I feel like those styles are kind of a semblance of that.
Well, it's like the Pimp My Ride of motorcycles.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what it seems
Yeah,
like.
it is. It is the Pimp My Ride. Yeah.
I mean, speaking of like that whole chopper trend, like that kind of like rose and fell.
Definitely.
Right within the decades.
Yeah.
I mean, what has kind of replaced that?
What has replaced that? I mean, as far as if we like pigeonhole that into just Harley Davidson or American Motors, which is all of what OCC did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, not just Harley Davidson, but S&S, RevTech, like these aftermarket companies that take a patent from Harley and create their own motor. I think that trend, a lot of stuff came out of that. There's like a few different companies like OCC, Jesse James, West Coast Choppers. I think he still has, he's set himself apart a little bit from that trend. He still has some relevance as a bike builder and actually just as like a great fabricator, machinist, blacksmith. I mean, the dude's fucking talented, just like Paulie and fucking Senior were. But those bikes grew out of popularity, and I mean, at least as long as I've been into motorcycles, and I mean, there's such a long history of it, but I saw cafes, like when I was starting in motorcycles, cafe racers and fucking Japanese and British style, stripped down, like clip on, over the top, bare bones. That gained popularity. And then and then boom, like it spiked, and all of these companies came out of that, and then all of a sudden it started to trickle off. And while that trickled off, like the popularity of the Sportster came up again. Everyone was getting into fucking 883s and Sportster 1200s, and before you knew it, like that kind of like segued into people being more interested in the history of American motorcycles and all these huge names, like Tom Hugel, that's like a legendary chopper builder from the 70s. David Mann, Arlen Ness did huge things back in the day, like these guys that kind of molded and shaped all these things. Like everything, history repeats itself, right? Just like things that are retro come back into popularity. So from OCC to, over the top shovel heads with fucking crazy ape hangers and molded tanks and, wicked rad paint, like it's just always doing this, and I like that. I like that it's ever changing a little bit. It kind of forces me to be adaptable, for sure.
What's the best weapon in a bar fight?
Pool cue, 100%. Pool cue. If there's a billiard table, a billiard ball, great. Pool cue, it's got reach. You snap it in half. You got two, and you're this motherfucker. You don't even have to hit someone with it. They're just scared.
All right, what's the best weapon at a Bed Bath & Beyond fight?
Oh, fuck. Oh, man. Fuck, that's a good question.
Ninja Blender is pretty aggressive.
I was gonna say Ninja Blender, like there's sharp stuff there for sure.
The shake weight could
The shake weight for sure. You know, I would say like a KitchenMaid. Is it KitchenMaid? Cuisine? A mixer?
Yeah, a mixer.
A big porcelain fucking mixer. Just fucking, you know what I mean? Spinning.
All right, how many bikes you got on the One Show this year?
I have. We're gonna say 2.
Yeah.
We're gonna say 2. Yeah, my personal bike. I got a KZ 1000 police special.
There we go.
That's a total moniker of my shit. You know, I've been doing those for the last like 4 or 5 years now. Got introduced to them by a good friend of mine who passed away in 2018 on the same bike actually. And after, you know, that was like a huge turning point in my life a little bit, especially as a builder. I was always into Japanese stuff, but I'd never seen someone do the style that he was doing. You know, it very much melded like these two things that I loved, like club style, like rugged Harley shit, and like vintage Japanese stuff. It's got fucking T-bars, like shortened fenders, shortened windshield. Like I've got 2017 Sportster parts all over it. Like all kind. It's crazy. So I'm stoked to have that in the show because I loved my friend. His name is Matt Fielding. He was a great fucking dude. And I keep building those bikes because it feels like I still have them around a little bit. You know, it's like I'm kind of carrying on the legacy for both of us a little bit, which is, you know, like I don't think I could hope for anything more than that. You know, just to honor my friend and do something that I love, which is really cool. And of course, this that I'm fucking sitting next to. Yeah, this is gonna be an Ironhead, which is the base is sitting right here. I've got the heads over at a motor worker in town, Baisley. It's a great machinist and motor shop. So they're doing, you know, shaving my cylinders and boring. This is not a personal build of mine. It's actually a customer of Legion, where we are. This is not my place, by the way. It might look like I own it, but Adam Miller, great guy, fan of us, great customer. He's been a customer for years. Came in, approached me, and was like, I've got this Ironhead that my dad bought new in the 70s that he tore apart in the early 80s, and it's been in boxes ever since. I want to build a fucking chopper out of it. I've got this hardtail frame and all the parts are here. I don't know anyone, I haven't thought about having anyone else in town do it. Like, is this something you'd be interested in? And I was like, duh, you know? Yeah, absolutely, you know? Those opportunities only really come every once in a while. So I was, I couldn't be more stoked to be, one, building a bike that he gave me almost entire creative control over, as far as the styling, and you know, he had some pointers, things that he liked and things that he didn't like, but he's mostly just trusting in me to build him a rad bike. And
that's the dream, man.
Building rad bikes, and like there's a story behind it, you know, like his dad bought it. It's like still fucking, like his dad is stoked for him to have it, and like they're like, you know, in cahoots together. And you know, and as soon as he approached me and said it, I was like, we need a One Show bike. You know, I would love to do this for you and put it in the show. And like, dude, you should have heard this guy on the phone. You know, he was like, oh my fucking God, like, you know, made his day, probably made his year. You know, so stoked. I work a fucking full-time job right now, 5 days a week, outside of Legion. And I'm excited to come here fucking every day after working 9 hours, waking up at 6 a.m. And I get to come here and fucking do this. Like, it's really a dream, man. You know, the only thing that could be better than this is just having my own space. You know, I kind of like to be alone a little bit. I think I focus in better sometimes when I'm alone. And when those things, you know, if I had a lift and a shop and it was in my backyard, like those things are readily accessible and I can kind of come and go and flow in and out of it. I feel like the artistry and the creativity blossoms a little bit more.
I agree with that, man.
You know, yeah, like artists, we like to be alone, man.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like sometimes you get the stimulus of like other artists like on your free time. And
sure.
It reinvigorates and it re-inspires you.
Yeah.
And when you're in your fucking zone, you want to be.
You want to
in
be
your
fucking
zone.
tunnel vision, man. Like my blinders are on. I want to be in it and totally focus. You know, I'm great. I can meld. You know, I've adapted so well to just having. You know, there's a fucking party going on across the fence, you know? Like, it's constant. There's always people in and out. Like, even during the day when I was here full time, like, it's nice to not get distracted. But on the other hand, like, being here, this community, Alex, Gabe, and Matt owning this place, like, creating this environment, like, I've been through so many fucking independent shops in my career, and this is, like, the mecca, man, you know? I moved here, I never once thought that I'd get the opportunity to work somewhere like here. So it's a fucking dream, man. I'm stoked.
Remind everyone who you are and how they can find you.
Cool, yeah. I'm Brennan Bartel. You can find me on Instagram at Bartel Moto, Bartel_Moto. Of course, you can come to the One Show. You can check my KZ out. You're gonna see this badged as a Legion bike. I'm the only guy who's working on it. So check me out there. Come by.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.